Welcome, gentlemen.
Good evening.
This has been a very different kind of a race. It models what happened 4 years ago, but so much money has been spent here, and so much of it by outside groups. Mr. Spader, what do you think? Is this the norm now? Is this what's going to happen across local elections?
Well, I mean, since the citizens' election decision by the Supreme Court, outside groups can spend as much as they want in elections. And even though we have a clean elections program here in Connecticut, it doesn't prevent the Democratic Governors Association, the Republican Governors Association, and a lot of outside groups to try and influence the election any way that they can. So I'm not sure what the final numbers are going to end up being. I believe between the two campaigns and all the outside groups, almost $30 million was spent on the gubernatorial campaign, and most of it just trying to encourage voters to know that the other guy's a bad guy. So hopefully the ads at the end for Dan Malloy, kind of softened the image and got the vote out for him today. But there's a lot of money spent in these campaigns.
And what about your opinion on this, Mr. Lambert?
Well, I think Connecticut had a rather unusual situation this time. Mm-hmm. There's only, from what I understand, about 9 Senate races that are really well contested. The other 90 or so, or 90% are not. Let's see, 9 is 9 out of 36, so 25% of them are contested, 75% are already givens on one side or the other. So Connecticut has not been a battleground state for years. All the money gets spent. We blessedly, mercifully don't have to put up with what they do in Ohio and Michigan on presidential stuff because it's already in one column there. This time you had a race that seemed to be up for grabs, and so both parties seem to spend a lot of money where there's a chance to win. And I think the other thing you saw in Connecticut this time was negative campaigning on both sides, which is different for a TV campaign in Connecticut. Wouldn't say that necessarily the Linda McMahon versus Blumenthal or Murphy didn't have any negative campaigning, but this was almost all negative campaigning through most of the past 2 months.
Will that impact the local races? I mean, here we have the incumbent, Mr. Yaccarino, facing Alden Mead. Will there be any impact on locally our votes?
Well, I don't think the gubernatorial campaign is really going to have much of a local effect as far as a turnout locally for those candidates. I mean, Alden ran a campaign that was pretty much right along with Governor Malloy's campaign issues and ideals. But I think that there is a sophisticated electorate here in Connecticut who separate the candidates and race by race. And this isn't an election where you had a presidential candidate or a Senate candidate that was really driving a lot of the media time. So the focus was really on the gubernatorial campaign, which left the local candidates to really do the old-fashioned retail politicking of the door-to-door, making those one-on-one voter contacts and who they are as a person. So I don't think that even in any of the races, the 9 races that John had mentioned for Senate that are hotly contested, and even the 5th district congressional district race between Estee and Greenberg, I don't think there's going to be coattails in this type of close election for the governor's race.
Mr. Lambert, what kind of an opponent has Mr. Mead been? Because last time Dave Yaccarino didn't have anyone running against him, correct?
That's right. He was unopposed last time. The first time he had an opponent. I don't think it's been a high-level public debate, shall we say, and I agree with Walter that for the most part, North Haveners expect their state rep to wear out a lot of shoe leather and knock on doors. And people today, I just don't think spend a lot of time watching a head-to-head debate. I don't know how much, for example, the League of Women Voters debate had an impact on the average voter. I think people in town know these two men and will make their decisions based on what they know. And that's very different. We don't nobody here knows Daniel Malloy. Nobody knows Foley. These are the candidates for state rep are amongst us, and so I think it's a totally different sort of analysis that takes place. And quite frankly, did you see any negative campaigning? Not really. There wasn't any.
They seemed evenly matched, and they seemed like two nice guys.
Well, exactly. It was a campaign between two nice guys, and as John said, the campaign was really on the streets. I was at the polls all day today with Alden, going place to place, and very few voters came up and said, "Oh, I saw that debate and I liked your answer to question 3." It was more, "Hey, you were at my door," or "I saw you at the North Haven High School football game," or "I saw you at Scotty's at Moonrise Cafe." It was a very local sense, and they did run a campaign which was pretty complimentary to each other and a compliment to the democratic process, because Alden stepped up for the Democratic Party and provided a challenger to Dave, which is what democracy needs to keep the incumbent honest, but really ran a campaign that I could be proud of as Democratic Town Chair, because he did wear out the shoe leather, just like Dave did. And you could see that at the polling places today when they were talking to voters. They were both together, and they did a lot of retail politicking.
What does it say about our system that there are a number of unopposed incumbents? Is it getting harder and harder to get people to run for office?
It's harder and harder to get people to participate generally in public life, at least in traditional ways. So people are going to have to reinvent how that happens. But social organizations, the Women's Club, you ever hear of those anymore? I remember them when I was growing up. The service clubs were, I think, much more central. The Elks, those associations are dwindling in numbers and whatnot. So people, it is hard to find. It is hard for the Democrats. It's hard for the Republicans to find people who want to serve and on local boards and commissions. And you have to be careful when someone does want to serve, because they may want to serve for the wrong reason. So
have we gotten that cynical? That people just are? Is it because of the light that they're under when they do put themselves out there?
No, I think people are just busy in different ways than, not in necessarily better ways, but different ways than they were 50 years ago. And so I think it's hard to find someone who wants to invest the time to run in a race that is unlikely to be successful.
Yeah, I'll speak as a Democratic Town Chair. It is difficult as any party chairman to find qualified candidates to run these days. So there's a lot of challenges that you have from the second you decide to be a candidate. You have to figure out how I'm going to raise the money to campaign. What is the best way to spend it? What is the right message? You have to budget the amount of time it takes to hit all those doors. You have to have a core of volunteers who believe in you that are going to make phone calls for you. And you can't just say, I want to be on the ballot, and expect that you're not going to have to put the work into it. And it's increasingly difficult with all the obligations people have, just paying the bills every month, to dedicate a portion of their time to campaigning.
But for example, in terms of just running, what would it take to get you to run against Rosa DeLauro or against when Richard Blumenthal was Attorney General? The chances of winning those races is, about the same as a meteor hitting the hitting
But I
New
have
Haven.
to
I
admit,
think he's already calling Rosa for tonight.
but I have to tell you, at one point in my past, I did run for public office. And the one thing that it showed me was that, number one, it's hard to run, and I didn't win, and I'm grateful I didn't, because, to tell you the truth, it's a hard job. Yes. I could see that by not even, just in the course of running, people were calling me up and telling me what they wanted fixed, and I thought to myself, I know politicians get a bad rap, but I think it's a hard job to get, and it's a hard job to keep.
It is discouraging, you know, as you read through your Facebook feeds tonight, how many people are going to be complaining about one of the candidates, you know, or another, and people don't realize how much work and how much dedication these public officials give to their job and to the people of their communities. It's an enormous responsibility, and usually all you get is criticized for one thing or another that may or may not be true, but it takes a life of its own in social media. But the public officials do work hard, and they do not get credit usually for a lot of the good things that they bring back to their communities.
Mr. Yaccarino and Mr. Fasano both voted for the state's gun law, which has been controversial to some people. When they were addressing a local group, and a lot of people were complaining about it, they basically said it was sort of the better of the two deals because they were able to get something that wasn't so draconian as the Democrats wanted. How has that impacted the race at all? Because Foley has not said that, you know, he would repeal it, but he said if it came to him, he would probably do that. But, you know, he's not going to write the legislation. Has that impacted the race at all, Mr. Lambert?
I would think in a very small way. I without mentioning names, I had one person who went out of his way a long time ago, a year ago, 6-7 months ago, long before the campaign, to say that he couldn't wait to vote against Dave Yaccarino because of that vote.
Oh.
That vote and that vote alone. And I just sort of shook my head as to, really, you know, the person's up there for a whole lot, and this one thing is that important to you. And he has every right to do that, okay? I'm not suggesting that. I fight to defend his right to do that. But I only heard one person say that, and while I'm sure you can multiply that by some factor, I don't think it's I don't think the gun laws of Connecticut ended up being an issue in this campaign.
Well, it certainly was an issue because, you know, as Democratic Town Chair and a big supporter of that law, that was the best votes that Lenny and Dave cast in their time in the legislature, in my personal opinion. I had the opportunity to put a candidate up against Len just to go after him on the gun bill, but why would I do that? Because I actually agreed with Len's vote there. And I myself would not support a state rep candidate who was going to go after Dave on that issue because, in my opinion, his and Lenny's support of Governor Malloy on that issue was their best vote. So, and I'm not apologetic for that at all. That was my main first question to Alden when he decided that he was interested in running, is what's your position going to be on this? Because I couldn't support or put town committee support behind someone that wasn't going to support that. And I don't think Foley was really being truthful to the public on that issue. I think he was just trying to not disenfranchise those potential anti-Malloy votes that were out there.
Because
So, you know,
was it the NRA did
well, the NRA was part of that $30 million against Dan
That's-
Malloy. I mean,
okay.
there's no, you know, there was a number of groups specifically on that issue targeting Dan Malloy. I think, you know, hindsight is always 20/20 in a gubernatorial campaign, but I do think that John McKinney was probably the best Republican candidate that could have the best campaign against Dan Malloy, but there was a number of groups that didn't support him at the Republican convention, you know, because he was also supportive of that legislation.
Do you think the NRA will hold up, if Foley does win, hold up Connecticut as a sign that we were able to introduce and pass this, get this legislation taken down in the Northeast?
I don't think they're going to be able to get the legislation taken down. The Democrats
Okay.
still control the House.
Right, I was going to say, even
Even
if
if-
Malloy wins,
Foley.
I mean, excuse me, even if Foley wins, he doesn't have a legislature behind him. And he would have to be making a case to the legislators to change their position, and in some sort of fear they're going to lose their seats if they don't. And I just don't think it is that big of an issue on a case by case basis in any representative district in this state. I'll be surprised if tomorrow someone is voted out of office because of their vote one way or the other on that issue. It's a controversial matter, and I've heard criticism of it as to aspects of it, not of the whole thing, but I can remember people. I don't own any guns, so I don't pay a whole lot of attention to that. It's not going to affect me at all. But some of the registration stuff where it sort of criminalized people who had done nothing wrong if they didn't get something, if they didn't affirmatively act. That sort of thing goes against common notions of how we behave. You don't, when you go to New York City, have to register that Teale Caliendo is in New York City, because you're just in New York City. You're just doing what you've always been doing. So, but I don't think that's an issue, and I don't think Foley has any chance. It's on the order of repealing the income tax. It's there.
And I remember when we got it too. I'm sure we all do.
Yeah.
And there were protests and everything. And you're right. Once it was in, it stayed in. Statewide, when it comes to what Foley has promised, if he got in 0.25% off the sales tax, is that a meaningful number?
Well, I think it's an easy promise to make. It's going to be hard in practice. I mean, there is still a state budget to deal with, and he promises shrinking government and lower taxes, but there's a state budget that still has to be in balance, and it's going to be a difficult task, whoever wins, to continue the growth of the last few years of cutting those state expenses. And yes, I mean, no one likes it. One of the biggest ads against Dan Malloy is he promised not to raise taxes. Well, he said taxes were going to be the last thing raising taxes was going to be the last thing he had to do, but he had to do it. But he also did a great job of dealing with the state unions and getting some contract buybacks and shrinking government, consolidating state agencies. It's a difficult task, and the task is going to continue regardless of who the governor is, of trying to find ways to lower taxes, but it's a very difficult challenge.
Tell me your feelings about Foley. Could there have been a better candidate, if you can?
Well, speaking only for myself, I expected him to have learned more from his previous campaign than he seemed to have done. He came awfully close, and you would think that given a second chance, you would not make any mistakes, and you'd have a better. He was criticized for not having a good message, an organized message, and I think some of that criticism perhaps has been fair. So, but let me answer your question about the 0.25%. I would just love any governor to give 0.25%, allow a town to collect 1/4% of taxes as a secondary means of income, because towns have complained ever since I've been here that they are so dependent. They're either dependent, like New Haven, on either the largesse of the legislature,
Right.
Or in the case of North Haven and most suburbs, almost completely on property tax. And property tax is a regressive tax because it at one time measured the ability to pay 300 years ago. If you had property, you probably had the ability to pay. Now, lots of people have property, especially the elderly, but not the means to pay. And income, and although income would probably be a better means of figuring out how to pay, the fact of the matter is I think most people don't trust the income tax, in the sense that if North Haveners paid more income tax, if that was raised, none of it would come back to North Haven. So why do that? But we have lots of sales here. We have a robust retail trade, both along Washington Avenue and down on Universal Drive North. So whoever the governor is, I just wish they would think of making that. I know when I grew up in California, a town could take could add 0.5%, and that belonged to the town. And speaking since I'm a North Havener, I would love to see an alternate
Has
form.
anyone pushed forward legislation?
I haven't any earthly idea. I'm sure it's been talked about. I suspect that getting Hartford to give up anything is probably difficult.
Well, I mean, I come from a city, I live in a city, so I know exactly what you're talking about when it comes to property tax. And it is difficult for older people, such as myself, because being on a fixed income. One other question about Mr. Visconti, who pulled out. Do you think that his being a petitioning candidate and then pulling out at the last minute will keep other people from doing that or not taken seriously? It seems like he was taken seriously up until he pulled out.
No, I do think that's an issue. I mean, he complained about not being taken seriously. He was only invited to 2 of the debates. I don't think when we look at the results at the end of this that his pulling out is going to have an impact on what the final numbers are. His support seems split between people that just didn't want to vote for either of the 2 major party candidates. And there wasn't a process to pull him off the ballot once he was on the ballot, and he essentially says he was pulling out on Sunday, but then told the Secretary of State, well, I'm not really pulling out, I'm just asking people to vote for Foley. But I do think it has an impact. I mean, it was a difficult process, and he was the only candidate that successfully petitioned his way onto the ballot, and there were other candidates who were trying. So it does kind of impact other candidates in the future who say, I'm going to try to be a petitioning candidate, I'm going to try to get on the ballot, when he pulled out in the manner that he did, without even a real press conference over it.
We just got some numbers in, and so this is the first time we're looking at them. And this is from 8/18, the time. David Yaccarino, this is Park and Rec, 1,197, and Alden Mead, 482. And the difference, as you can see, is quite a bit. Okay, and that's what we have. So far, the voter turnout with this number has been 11%, but we were saying already we're up to 57 total.
Well, as of 6 o'clock, I think it was already at 62%.
Wow.
And 4 years ago, I think it was about 66 or 67%. So we were already, along the lines that we may surpass our turnout from 2010. So, it could be a lot of voters that went out to vote.
Well, is this stat that 71% of District 1 showed up? Is that what that?
No, it's just, I think 11% of the...
Oh, for Dave Yaccarino, I'm sorry. It's DY, that's...
Yeah, for Dave and
Okay.
for Alden. So it's, there's, quite a plurality there, 71% to 29%. What about Park and Rec? What does that tell you? Would you think that that area would be going to Mr. Yaccarino?
Well, I think it would be going to him in general, but District 1 where I live is one that traditionally is one of the heavier Democratic districts in the town.
So if we were going to see more Democrats...
Ridge Road would be another...
Okay, so this is obviously good for Dave, because it shows that he's got a lot of constituency in this area. What does that tell you? Are they happy with the work he's doing?
Well, it doesn't really tell me anything because it's one district.
Okay.
I mean, it comes on consistently around the town. It's not whether someone's happy with the work someone's doing or not. Like I said, I was happy with his gun vote. The issue is, I have a new candidate out there, first time on the ballot, that's really getting out there, getting known, and doing the work. And Dave has been, campaigning for years, hitting the doors for years. So you'd expect he's got all the advantages of incumbency in that district.
So what does that tell you? Do you really think that, obviously Dave Yaccarino has been a popular guy so far, and would Alden Mead, if he doesn't win, would you consider running him for some office again, because he seemed to have made a good impact?
Well, with Alden, I've been trying to talk him into going on a board or commission for years. I mean, I've been on him for, I've been town chair for about 4 years now, and for 4 years, every time there's an opening on a board or commission, because what the public has learned about him is absolutely true. He is a great guy. He's I kind of joke internally that He could be the Dos Equis guy, the most interesting guy in North Haven, with his history. I mean, Vietnam vet, CEO of the Eye Center. I mean, his resume is, there's so many areas where he can serve this town in such a positive capacity. He's a dream candidate for his background and for his likability. Yeah, I would love him to serve anywhere that that he'd be willing to.
Well, we talked about this before, but you've got about 15,300 registered voters, and you say it's about 4,000 Republicans, 4,000 Democrats.
Isn't that about right?
about
And then the others are unaffiliated. So it's pretty evenly distributed. So definitely, will the unaffiliated make the difference then?
Well, I think in North Haven it's unaffiliated leaning Republican. It feels that way, quite often as a Democratic town chair. And the key is just any opportunity we can to get our message out there and put candidates up before the public to show them that we are alive as a party here in town. I'm proud of the work, especially over the past 3-4 years, of the turnover on the town committee. I've got a lot of new members on the town committee. The people who are working in Alden's campaign, making the phone calls, going door to door with him, are people who were not really involved in politics over the past 5 years. They were just people that came involved in the last couple of years. And if you're home watching this right now, the Democratic Town Committee is a new, young, vibrant organization. And if you have any interest in politics, working campaigns, contact me. We have room to add new members and to get people involved in campaigns. Alden only joined the town committee 4 years ago. When I met him, I recruited him to join, and already running for an office in that time, and I've been looking for a space for him on a board or commission. There's opportunities if you want to give back to the public to serve. And so I'll welcome anyone to contact me if you're interested in getting involved in the Democratic
How
Town
can
Committee.
people contact you? Do you want to give the phone number?
Oh, yeah. Most people grab me through Facebook. My email is easy, waltspader@aol.com. And my phone number is 203-234-1080.
We had a ballot question.
Yes.
Let's talk about the ballot question. What does it mean? Can you explain it?
I'll take this one. Well, you can take it
no,
too.
go ahead.
Okay.
Then you can take it.
Because this will be the first point we'll really probably debate here. The ballot question. The Democratic Town Committee supported it, and it is an opportunity for the legislature to allow earlier voting in Connecticut. And today we saw an exact example of why something like that's necessary. People showed up to vote in Hartford this morning at 6 o'clock. I don't even think the polls have closed yet in Hartford because they showed up to vote, and in a number of polling places they weren't ready to start taking voters. They didn't have checkoff sheets. How many people show up to vote and may not have an opportunity because there's some registrars that didn't do their job correctly? We don't experience that here in North Haven. Your wife was a registrar for a number of years, never had a problem. Our registrars right now, Lori and Patty, they do a great job. We don't ever see problems here in North Haven. But there are places where there are problems, and there are problems that people have going to vote. A lot of things people complained about 4 years ago. Oh, Bridgeport had to have their polls open late because they didn't have enough ballots. Problems do occur that may impact the ability for people to vote on Election Day. There is early voting in Connecticut through absentee ballots. That's what I hear a lot of times from Republicans, and that's one of the main arguments. It's not a no-fault absentee ballot. You have to sign an oath that you're not available in your town between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m., and it could be scary to some people to sign the oath to get the absentee ballot. Why not make it a no-fault early voting? You're not going to see fraud issues, especially not in places here like Connecticut, and certainly not in North Haven. I don't think there's any reason not to allow the legislature the opportunity to look at our election laws and make sure things like happened in Hartford this morning don't happen.
Here's a good place to have a little debate.
That's fine.
What it does is it amends the Constitution, and it puts it into the legislature's hands at any time. It's not just this time to allow early voting. It can change early voting any way it wants to, legislatively, instead of having it in the Constitution. If we wanted to have a constitutional amendment, that might be one thing, but I happen to believe that while the right to vote is, as they say, the cornerstone of democracy, the right to vote also suggests some sort of informed vote, and one of the things that has been pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed is same-day registration. And we have same-day registration. You just can't vote. And it amazed me. I overheard someone today coming in to register to vote today. Really? Today. There's been a campaign going on for 2 months. It's an important thing to do, and it is an important thing to do, it seems to me, to cast your vote. It should be something done importantly. And that's why it's so... My concern, when or at least the concern articulated by both Len Fasano and Dave Yaccarino, is that there's more to it than what is being sold, which is just early voting. If we want early voting, let's do a constitutional amendment that has early voting, but not just turn it over to the legislature to on whatever the whims and advantages are of changing how we vote. Because that all you need is a majority vote to change things. And we've had things that take more than a majority vote to alter our voting patterns.
So you think this is going to open the door, and it's just it's too open-ended?
Yeah, and I don't believe in same day and registering to vote and voting that day. Simply because the registrar's office is open all year long. And if someone who wishes to cast their vote only can get up the energy to want to do that on the day at a whim, I'm just not terribly impressed with that part of the democratic process.
Well, I mean, there's a few dozen people right here in town that would disagree with you. As of noon today, we had 19 people that registered for the first time this morning. That was as of noon. I don't know if those numbers continued on. In New Haven at 5 o'clock, the reports there was a 2-hour line to register to vote. You know, as John
I agree
said,
that they would disagree with me.
Yeah, as John said earlier, you know, there's a lot of things going on in people's lives today. They're busy with other things. They're not all Elks members. They're not all Knights. You know, they're not all Lions. There's a lot of pressures in people's lives to make a living, to do things with your kids, to bring them out to all the different sports programs. And yes, while the two of us sitting here, you know, live and breathe a lot of our local politics, and a lot of people on our town committees, a lot of people in our town do. There are a lot of people that just don't have the opportunities, don't have the chance, and it's easy. I know it is. You know, you can register on your phone these days. But there are people that may not think of it until they get all those last barrage of campaign messages in those last couple days. So giving the opportunity to people, I don't know how more democracy can be a bad thing.
Thank you. And we have some other numbers in, and once again, these are not official numbers. The first time we talked about the first district, now we have Green Acres and Clintonville, and I believe we're showing Clintonville on the screen right now. And Green Acres will come up in a second. And you can see we have 1,534 for Dave, and Alden Mead 414. And the breakdown is 79% to 21%. And Green Acres will be coming, oh, there it is. Okay, 762 for Dave and 305, and that's 71 to 29%. What do these numbers tell you now? You've got a few more coming. And once again, they're unofficial, but it seems to be a trend. Yeah,
not... You know, I would expect a little bit of a better turnout for Alden in those districts, because he did walk, he did do the door-to-door. But again, he's a first-time candidate who's never put himself before the people of North Haven. So, you know, just the number of people who did come out and support him and believed in him, it's encouraging. And
now, do you have Mr. Lambert?
No, I think Walter's stated it pretty well.
We can start agreeing again.
North Haven is, I mean, this is the land of steady habits, and North Haven, when it selects someone, it tends to allow that person to represent them until there's some reason for a change, shall we say, and a first-timer, Laura Jean Hannon ran against Steve Fontana, if you recall, a couple of times. And this would be the first exposure. If I understand, Mr. Mead's lived in town for 20-some years, but he's not known widely, I wouldn't think, having served on boards or anything like that.
Well, I know that one person said to me once it gets under your skin, you're going to want to do it again. Except that wasn't true with me. It was too much work. It was so hard. So you think that Mr. Mead may want to do something again?
Well, I don't know if he's going to run for state rep again. I'd love it if he did, because I think he started building at the end a group of people who were previously not involved in the political process, getting involved in the political process, and that's a benefit of a campaign at any time.
There was something, I guess Foley came out specifically saying that he would not have an assisted suicide bill. It's just that it's been in the news lately with the young woman who decided that she wanted help committing suicide. Do we know where these guys stand on that?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't think that issue came up here in
Okay, so because it had come up in the legislature, hadn't it, at some point?
Yeah, I don't remember it specifically as part of any of the debates or in the talking points.
We have more numbers that have just come in. And Clinton, okay, we now have Montouise, which is 1,331 for Dave Yaccarino, 538 for Alden Mead. So at this point, I guess that says the voter turnout is up to 43% for the numbers that we have. But we already know that the numbers had gone up to, would you say 62?
Yeah, by 6 o'clock, yes.
So that was pretty good, and so obviously it's going to go beyond that. North Haven has been doing pretty well economically. Why is that when some other towns have had more trouble, but North Haven seems to be thriving? Mr. Lambert?
Well, what do you mean by that? I think I know that Mike Frieda made that a hallmark of what he wanted to do was to grow the revenue of the town.
Grow the grand list.
The grand list. But it's not easy to do. It's not easy to do in this economy and in this time in history. I mean, if you go back long enough, long before Mike was here, we lost, Pratt & Whitney left, essentially. And Blue Cross Blue Shield is now a university, a non-taxpayer. So it's both of those things, you sort of wipe this slate and have to start over on those things. And I think North Haven's growth is let's call it steady but sure, but it's not easy anywhere, and I'm not sure how Mike would describe what he's been able to accomplish.
Well, I mean, I just as a consumer, I can see along the Universal Drive area, there are stores opening.
There are stores opening, and the Best Buy Center broke ground right when the world economy melted.
Yes.
Okay. So, but if you look at that center is not as strong with the tenants that it has
Vibrant,
that it
yes.
intended to have. It did not intend to ever
So
have
there's
the
obviously
odd lots or whatever.
Still a lot of room for growth.
There's still a lot of room for recovery, I would say, and a lot of room for plenty of places that economic development can take place, including, for example, the Northeast Graphics Place and the Pratt & Whitney site.
We are going to show you a graphic now of the Montouise results. 1,331 to Alden Mead's 538. We told you that before, but now we have it on a graphic. So once again, we're just reiterating that it certainly looks like Dave Yaccarino is going to be there for another 2 years, and maybe Mr. Mead will look for another seat or something, because there's certainly a lot of, like I said, seats that go unopposed, which is really a shame, in my estimation, that there aren't more people out there willing to do this. It's hard work, but still willing to do it.
Let me go just a little further on North Haven and economics, because if towns and states prosper, countries prosper when you have a strong civic body that enables and yet regulates commerce. Commerce doesn't thrive without good government. And North Haven's, for example, in planning and zoning, has really kind of a long tradition of bipartisan efforts to try to help develop the town. Longtime Democratic leader of it, Chair Don Palumbo, worked well, and Republicans worked with him. He worked with Republicans, and there's no partisanship there in trying to develop the town, I don't believe. And so that kind of cooperation, I think, has helped the town generally, as opposed to places where there's kind of a dysfunction often with the two parties. Easier to drag and criticize the other and get nothing done than to work together and get something done.
Right. I think, as John said, I mean, the cooperation between the parties on the different boards, such as the Zoning Board and the ZBA and the Economic Development Commission, these are the types of things that if you're a company and you're looking, where am I going to bring my business, and you look at the political structure locally, there's a lot more consistency in North Haven. You're not going to have some of the partisan battles that may hold up your permits, that may hold up developments you need or construction you need or adding sewers, because we have a structure here in North Haven where the different party members working on boards and commissions really do, I know it's cliche, but they really do put the town first. And I think
and anti-development forces have been fairly responsible here. We've had the people that years ago put the screws to Upjohn for good reason, and then there was there were certain people that in hindsight hobbled that original mall from 30 years ago, that I think the town looks as a blessing that it never got developed. But we haven't had a strong anti-development of anything type of community. The people who have been fairly responsible and smart about things, rather than just saying, let's oppose everything. Whatever you want to do, that means we don't want it done. That hasn't happened here. I've been here now 34 years. I haven't seen that happen.
One of the things that Foley mentioned were enterprise zones. And enterprise zones comes up, it's for the past 30, 40 years. Are they sunsetted? Is that why they go away? Or, I'm curious that it's coming back now. I remember this from Reagan's time.
Well, let me answer it more on a Foley-Malloy basis, because that's what I like to do. Look at development in North Haven. Funds that came from the State Bonding Commission to move a company, Cowles, into the old Marlin site. The attempts to develop the State Street as one of the first five. That one didn't work out. Foley has criticized Malloy's First Five initiative. He calls it corporate welfare. But when you have a governor who believes in a town, such as he does believe in North Haven, he's been trying to put businesses in here with us. These are the type of incentives that he's offering. And Mike Frieda just passed last month his own tax initiative program to help with economic development here locally. If it's a difference between getting a business into a vacant building in North Haven, I'm supportive of Dan Malloy's policies to help allow us to do that.
Excuse me 1 minute. We have an interview coming from Democratic headquarters, and let me get Lisa's name correctly. Annecharico. Are we ready for Lisa now? Oh, just give me a signal. Okay. We're going to be going to Lisa in a second. And what were you just saying about that? I
I
lost
was
my
just saying
train
that
of
Dan
thought.
Malloy's great.
Oh, Dan
And Tom Foley is.
Okay, and Tom Foley? Regarding the enterprise zones, it's not a new initiative, but they keep coming back.
How to make them work is an individual type of approach, it seems to me. The problem with them, and the problem with any type of incentive, is to be able to capture it and not give away more than you need. I seem to recall there were the tax incentives for the movie industry with a 30% credit of every dollar they spent or something. We haven't seen a whole lot of movies done in Connecticut, and I'm not sure that may be a good thing because it's an awfully expensive type of thing. So when you do the enterprise zones, one of the things you need to I guess it comes up with what's often called the prisoner's dilemma, which is if other people are doing it, you have to do it. And North Haven, I think Mike Frieda has found that other people are competing for these places, and so everyone does it. Whether it's wise across the board is questionable. But if Georgia is doing it, how do we not do it? If the South is taking away Connecticut's business, do we have to play the game, whether it's a smart game in the long run or not?
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, we are now going to the Democratic headquarters and Lisa Annecharico.
I'm Lisa Annecharico at the Democratic headquarters with Steve Gifford. Steve, can you tell us a little bit about Alden Mead's campaign?
Absolutely. Alden Mead he's a 20-year resident of North Haven. He's got an incredibly varied and rich career history that he brings to his candidacy. He's been a professor at Yale. He's a Vietnam veteran. He's run a small business and grown it substantially. So he's got a lot of experience on many of the issues that affect North Haven residents and affect the people of Connecticut. He's got healthcare experience. He's very good on senior and veterans issues. He's run a small business, and so we were incredibly blessed and grateful to have him step forward and express his interest in it. He's a first-time candidate, and so he was, getting his name out there. We've certainly been at a disadvantage because, his friends and family know him, people know him, but he's not, he hasn't run for anything before. But he's made up for that in spades by just calling all the time, calling voters, knocking on every door. And what's remarkable, standing with him at the polls today, is finding out just how many, essentially, friends he's made over the course of that process. He knows everybody suddenly as they come through. So we were, frankly, extremely fortunate to have Alden step forward. And I think we've run a campaign that the whole organization is very proud of.
Thank you very much. And what do you think about the turnout at the polls today?
We're used to kind of lulls during the day where there aren't that many people coming in. It really didn't happen today. You had a very steady turnout all day, which is great. It's a remarkable degree of interest. I don't think the level is going to hit presidential year 2012, but I think we're going to beat the number of people who showed up in 2010, and that's really a testament to the engagement of the candidates, engagement of the town committees, really getting the word out about the candidates.
Thank you. And what actions has North Haven Democrats taken to support the state ticket?
I think pretty much anybody on the town committee would agree this is the most engaged town committee we've had in a very long time. We have just a ton of enthusiasm. We've got a lot of new members who are very interested in helping out. And so, we've much of the time when Alden's been knocking on doors, he's had members of the town committee or other people with him there. We've been working phone banks both for the state party and for our local candidates probably for a month or two now. Any earlier than that, people aren't thinking about the election yet. To give you a sense, to qualify for public financing, and Alden's campaign qualified for public financing. Senator Looney, who has a piece of North Haven, qualified for public financing. You have to get a certain number of contributions, small dollar contributions from people, and North Haven has just come forward for that to support our statewide candidates because they need small dollar contributions as well. And we've actually honestly gotten a lot of support from the state candidates as well. Attorney General Jepsen came to speak to the town committee. In the Memorial Day parade, we had Secretary of State Merrill and Comptroller Lembo, and the Lieutenant Governor were there for it. So we've had a whole lot of support from the state party, a whole lot of enthusiasm here, because North Haven's a very it's a very desirable town from an electoral point of view, because we have almost the same number of registered Democrats as Republicans, so it can swing either way. And we see that in national elections. I mean, the town went for President Obama in both years, but we've had Republican first selectmen for a while. So we're really on the cusp there, which is why a lot of the state players have been very interested in coming here, and we've been very glad to have them and help them.
Thank you very much, Stephen.
Thank you so much.
I'm Lisa Annecharico for NHTV News.
Thank you very much. We've been talking here about how the gubernatorial race is playing in North Haven, and you have some numbers for us.
Well, so far I only have 2 districts in on the gubernatorial basis, but in the rec center, Foley won 853 to 802, which is a 51 vote differential, and I have Clintonville in at 1216 for Foley to 905 to Malloy. That's counting both their votes on the working family and Democrat for Malloy and Independent and Republican for Foley, so that's a combined number, which is 311 vote plurality. So where that is, it's pretty consistent with where North Haven was 4 years ago. So far in those 2 districts, from my recollection, I don't have all the numbers right in front of me. 4 years ago, North Haven carried Foley by almost 1,200 votes. So my goal as Democratic Town Chair is obviously to try to cut into that. So I don't know where we're going to be at this point because I only have 2 of the 5 districts in. But it's looking to be pretty consistent with where it was 4 years ago at this point.
People were splitting, obviously.
Well, even if you look at the ballot, and everyone out there that voted today, it starts with Governor, then it goes right to Rosa DeLauro, and I'm sure that Rosa's pretty safe in this election. Then it went to Len Fasano, and I'm sure we can call for Rosa and Lenny, because they didn't, Rosa had an opponent, but I'm sure Rosa's going to be successful. So there will be some ballot splitting, and you can see the split right here. Dave won the rec center by 715 votes. Foley only won the rec center by 51 votes. So I don't know how it's going to play out statewide. I'm getting a lot of updates as the day's going in. I guess they're talking, looks like statewide turnout's going to be up potentially 8% from 4 years ago, when there was a Senate race then. And
I think we should be trying to find out too what's happening with the ballot vote, the ballot initiative.
Yeah, I don't have that yet.
And Ridge Road is not in yet, and I also know that at some point we're going to be going to Republican headquarters with Mike Frieda. And obviously this is a Republican town. How long has it been leaning Republican?
Well, I think since 1869 there's been about 6 or 8 years of Democratic first selectmen. Is that the historical correctness?
Yeah, but it was probably a Republican town in terms of registration for most of that time. It is, as Walt Spader says, a town that no longer has that many affiliated voters. Almost half the voters are unaffiliated. But most of the time, they tend to lean Republican, although I think his comment there of District 1, I told you that's often a heavily Democratic district. Dave Yaccarino carries it mightily. 4 years ago, he only won the town by 764 votes. And as Walt said, Foley won by 1198. 4 years ago.
Right.
But we don't have the other 3 districts in, but I think Walt's probably correct. It's probably not much different this year than it was 4 years ago for Foley. It's not like it's hard to say that Daniel Malloy had the advantage of incumbency in this town that Dave Yaccarino has shown. That is, that the people here decided that they want to vote for Dave Yaccarino. Doesn't seem like there's much trending away, but there doesn't seem to be much. If anger fuels a campaign, there doesn't seem to be a lot of that being reflected in North Haven from 4 years ago.
So it's pretty much as it was.
And we'll get some, hopefully by the time we're done, we'll have a better idea of...
Is it basically, even on a local level, all about getting out the vote, the ground game?
Well, I mean, that's what it's all about, no matter which race you're running for where. I mean, the main emphasis of the Malloy campaign statewide has been voter turnout. And, North Haven obviously is not a targeted place for the state Democratic Party. The resources... even a lot of our callers here in North Haven, members of North Haven Democratic Town Committee, were in New Haven making phone calls in New Haven, because that's where your calls can be more effective as far as likely to bring out that voter.
We are going to be going, as I said before, to the GOP headquarters with Mike Frieda, but we are actually going to be going to it right now.
We're back at Republican headquarters, and I have our first selectman, Mike Frieda. Mike, thanks for stopping by and talking to us.
Joe, it's always my pleasure to be with you here on NHTV with our listeners and viewers, so good to see you.
Tell me about the election. I know you're very busy in it, and what happened? What do you think's going to happen?
Well, I was with Dave at most of the polls today. I was around myself, and I like getting out and talking to people and seeing what the temperature is, so to speak. And I think it's going to be, at a state level, a very close race. Here in North Haven, Dave seems to have a great deal of support, and I'm one of his biggest supporters. I've really enjoyed working with him, Joe. I've seen very clearly how Dave looks at the residents of North Haven and represents everybody. He's been a great delight for me to work with, and I think we really work well together, and I've been really honored to work with Dave Yaccarino.
I know you're busy because of people looking for you out there in the crowd. And
never too busy for you, Joe, or North Haven TV.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming up and give us a couple of words.
Great to see you, Joe.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. We're going to take another look at the numbers that have come in so far. We had in District 1, Park Rec, 1,197 to Alden Mead's 482. And we have Montouise, 1,331 to 538. Obviously, the Republican ahead. We don't have Ridge Road yet. We're going straight to District 4, Green Acres, 462 to 305. And in Clintonville, 1,534 for the incumbent, 414 for Alden Mead. And we are still waiting for Ridge Road to come in. What do we predict for Ridge Road?
Well, I have some numbers from Ridge Road, but I think it might just be there's two polling spots in Ridge Road, 311 and 334. Because the numbers that have been texted to me for Ridge Road is 547 for Dave and 428 for Alden, and that sounds. That's too low. That's less than 1,000 votes, though. Right. So that sounds too low. So it might just be one of the machines in Ridge Road. It might not be both the machines in Ridge Road.
But not surprisingly, it's a closer race.
Yeah.
Ridge Road used to be a long time ago a heavily Republican district, and that's not the case anymore.
Right. And in going to the gubernatorial race in those districts, again, I think my Ridge Road number only has part of the story. But I have Montouise 1,043 for Foley to 811 for Malloy, which is a 232 vote swing. Green Acres, I have 598 for Foley to 463 for Malloy, which is a 135 vote plurality for Foley. And in what I have so far for Ridge Road, I have 556 Foley, 532 Malloy, which is a 24-vote plurality. So I do think there's one tape we're still needing from Ridge Road, but at that point, Foley only has an advantage of 753 votes, and so I'm pretty confident there's still one tape to come from Ridge Road. And if that is the case, that we will, he will not have gotten a 1,200 vote plurality out of
Can
North
you
Haven like he did.
extrapolate from those, few numbers, what's going to happen statewide? I know that's impossible, so I don't even know why I'm asking you.
What I can, it's hard to look at it statewide. What I'm seeing on Twitter so far seems to be a lot of excitement with Mark Greenberg's, campaign operatives in the 5th District, looking at Elizabeth Esty. It's going to take a long time to count New Haven, Bridgeport, Hartford. They have a lot of polling districts, a lot of precincts, and that's where the majority of votes come. I know earlier today, at 7 o'clock when I was looking, New Canaan's numbers were not large, and that was Foley's largest town for largest plurality, and their turnout was running a lot further behind than it was 4 years ago. But the big cities are up. New Haven was performing and outperforming 2010, as was Bridgeport. Hartford didn't close the polls till 8:30, so we don't know what's happening there. But what I'm reading is the typical where the Democratic operations have been. And again, even members of my North Haven Democratic Town Committee were making calls into New Haven because that's where we needed to get out the vote.
Giving Malloy another, say, 500 votes, if there's one more to come in, what's the total you have? His total in 4 years ago for the town on both lines was 4375.
Yeah, I didn't add it up yet. 1 year. What was it 4 years ago?
4375 on both lines.
I have 3513 so far. So we're still missing one district from Ridge Road.
Right. It sounds like the total vote might be down a little, so it's probably about the same. The plurality is not, but the percentage split.
Yeah.
So, yes, the real question is whether is who comes out to vote. And that's always the question, isn't it? Who goes out to vote?
I just got this, that First Selectman Michael Frieda told Bill Delane that he is going to be running again for a 4th term as First Selectman next November. I think we sort of realize this might be coming. Has he made a formal announcement before?
Not to me.
Oh, well, he told Bill.
Oh, breaking news. Shocker.
You heard it here
Where's
first.
the banner? Yes. What will that mean? He's obviously a very popular First Selectman.
Well, and again, it is difficult to, the history I spoke of with 6 to 8 years of Democratic First Selectmen in the 150 years
You're not,
of politics.
you're not joking. No.
No, I'm not joking. But at the same time, I have an obligation to put, if I can find a good candidate who's willing to put the work in, to keep Mike accountable, to have to answer to those questions. So that is what I'll be doing. Sally's the 3rd select woman right now. She is the logical candidate because she's on the board now, but we haven't had those discussions yet for next year's candidate.
But I agree with Walt. The strength of a community, the strength of a society is a strong government that's active. It's following the rule of law, and then that third part of it is accountability. And people get better when they're tested. That includes Daniel Malloy. If he wins tonight, he's better to be tested than to be allowed to roam free, to be challenged and to be challenged seriously. It is good for all to be to that. So I think Mike is popular, and our town. The one great thing about being the short terms that we have here is that he's expected to do everything, and I don't mean him, the first selectman before him and all of the selectmen before them. Every pothole you have, every leaf you want picked up and whatnot, that's the place that ends up being the where North Haveners will hold that person accountable. And if they are upset with how those services are being delivered, or if taxes get too high or something, they will be held accountable. You have 2 years, and every 2 years you were
That
tested.
makes it tough, though, doesn't it, sometimes? I mean, probably not at this level, but when you come to our representatives in the federal government, they just get working and then they have to start raising money again. I mean, this is getting to be a constant cycle of raising money. Isn't there a better way?
Well, a lot of people have tried to come up with one, but haven't yet, because elections are expensive. You know, they're, especially as a challenger. You know, you have to spend the money to get name recognition out there. You have to spend money to have campaign staff, to have the operations you need on election day. And the Connecticut elections program has solved some of those problems for legislative races. So yes, there are a number of uncontested races. It's not 75%, there are some token challengers in there, but you know, the ability to raise money on a lot of those elections is not as burdensome. The congressional constitutional officers this year, there were challenges to George Jepsen. I don't have the numbers, but I'm sure George was successful. There were challenges to Kevin Lembo as comptroller. You know, in previous years, the Republican Party did put up a token candidate, maybe didn't raise money, maybe didn't really work on a campaign. All the candidates that even challenged the Democratic incumbents were able to use the Citizens Election Program, hit the numbers, and have ads on TV, have mailings, where candidates in previous years may not have. So some of the advantages of incumbency in our state election system, you know, have been not solved, but at least minimized. But it's still, for Congress, you know, the enormous amount of money to do mailings and TV and the size of our districts, you know, you have to start raising money as soon as you're elected.
That's what I mean.
You know?
And then you have to work, too, supposedly, you know.
Yeah, that's one of the sad realities. I mean, one of the things that bothers me about elections is how few what used to be called and almost extinct grassroots campaigns. The only one I can remember in Connecticut on a congressional basis was when Bruce Morrison beat the Democratic chosen benighted candidate. I think it was Warwick, who was an alderman in New Haven.
Stephen Warwick.
Stephen Warwick, and Bruce Morrison he was, you know, sort of legal aid guy, and he had these campaign workers, and they went out and they beat him, and then he went out and beat, you know, the incumbent Larry Nardis.
And Alden was one of those campaign workers.
And but when have you seen a grassroots campaign? And that's 32 years ago.
Right.
When I was little, when I was 8 years old, my dad ran a congressional campaign out in Southern California. He was the manager of it, and I remember licking stamps and the labels and whatnot. But his theme was $1 a ballot. His candidate wouldn't take more than $1. He solicited you to put up $1 for him, and that was it. Now, that's not going to happen. And I mean, but even if you accounted for inflation and made that $10 a ballot, I would much rather see a Congress filled with people who got in at $10 a ballot than with all of the stuff. You just don't see it anymore. And Walter's pointed out all of these sort of scientific methods that are employed, from the mailers to the robocalls. I'd like to ask a question here. Does anyone on this panel listen to any of those phone calls once you know it's not the person?
Well, look,
I hate to.
They work.
I'm taking off of all the Republican lists, so I don't get a lot of these solicitations from them.
Well, Rosa called us.
She didn't. Nobody called me, actually. I don't know why, but no one's called me.
I don't know how many. There was something. Alden called us. I wouldn't care. It's not that I dislike Alden. I wouldn't.
Thank you.
If there isn't a human being to talk to me on the other end, has the time to talk to me, I don't want to listen to it. But someone must think that those are effective. And there were calls this morning to urge people to get out to vote. And who am I to argue with people who get paid to make those decisions that's effective.
Right, and from a campaigning point of view, the problem is, as soon as a candidate wins that employed any of those techniques, well, the next campaign manager doesn't want to not do the technique that was used 2 years ago, because they don't want to lose the campaign and say, well, it was your fault for making that decision. So these same techniques that keep getting used that do annoy a lot of the voters, well, they keep getting used because someone believed they worked 2 years ago.
You need caller ID, because I don't answer any 1-800 numbers. And if they don't leave a message for me, I know it's not important. We are going to be going to Bill Delane because he has some interviews with a few of our participants, Dave Yaccarino, Len Fasano, and Michael Frieda. Do we have that tape right now? Oh, we don't have it yet. Anyway, we are going to be listening to some of those interviews and speeches. What happens tomorrow now? Does everybody just sleep for a week?
Well, tomorrow we're still going to be sitting around wondering who won the governor's race.
That's very possible, yeah.
No, the candidates that won tonight, Rosa, Lenny, Dave, their job doesn't end. I mean, in the state legislature, Lenny and Dave have meetings Thursday already to start going into who the leadership is going to be for next year. Rosa, I don't know what the makeup is going to be of Congress. There is still work that has to get done. I mean, their job is not just the campaign. It's only part of the job. It's governing, and it's the work they do for us as our representatives that continue on.
Yeah, I would think that most of the candidates feel happy that it's mercifully over and they can get back to what what their passions are all about.
It's really a shame that people have gotten so negative about so much of this, though. I mean, with Congress nationally, its ratings are so abysmal. It's really sort of sad because it's almost like politicians, lawmakers have become a necessary evil. People don't want to even deal with them anymore.
Well, maybe, and that's why the local level has some sort of breath of fresh air. I am always taken back by people who say, I hate politics, or I hate politicians. And there is, a connotation of a politician versus a statesman. So it's a negative one. But the fact of the matter is, the reason for politics is that people in a society, don't agree on everything. And a good politician, using your gun law, for example, tries to figure out how to solve these problems. Problems exist because people exist. And a good politician, figures out how best, for the moment, to deal with the problem that's at hand. And so when people say you don't like them, they may not like certain things about them, but a good politician is something to be cherished.
Yeah, and a lot of people, speaking of local elections and local politics, they don't realize, a lot of times do not realize the importance of the members of your Board of Ed, your zoning board, until there's some development coming into town that may need a zoning change that may have an impact on people's lives, and then, geez, who's on my zoning board? I don't remember voting for them. Or, not knowing who these people are, who dedicate a lot of time of their lives to service of this town. A lot of times it goes under the radar, the amount of work they do put in on these boards, especially the Board of Ed. I mean, as former chairman, how much work those members of the Board of Ed do. And usually they're only called out when they're at a football game to get criticized over something, rather than thanks for the work they've done.
I used to always say that when I was asked to be on the Board of Ed, that the main difference was from being on the ZBA is on the ZBA, you make a decision, and it's a very personal decision, whether you get to get a garage or something like that. And you have either made a friend for life or an enemy for life. And it's very personal, because you say, no, you can't have your garage. Or yes, go ahead, have the garage. On the Board of Ed, it's almost the opposite. It's sort of impersonal. And I used to say, half the people say that you're spending too much. Half the people say you're not spending enough. But 100% will tell you you're spending it all wrong.
Very true. We're going to take a look again at the numbers that we do have. We still do not have Ridge Road. District 1, Park and Rec, 1,197 to Alden Mead's 482, Montouise, 1,331 to 538. And go to Green Acres, 762 to 305, and Clintonville, 1,534. I'll wait till that comes up, to 414. Still awaiting the numbers from Ridge Road. Do you have anything else for us? We are going to be going to the GOP interviews in a second, but we're not ready with that tape right now. What do you think these guys are going to tell us? I don't think we have anything with Alden Mead yet. Do you know if he is going to concede tonight?
We're over here in this studio headquarters. I'm sure he's probably already gone over to Fantasia.
Okay, that's where the...
Dave and Alden, had talked, and they were already planning on, they were going to see each other, around 8:45, 9 o'clock. So, again, they're two good guys.
They are.
It was the most positive campaign, which was such a refreshing campaign, compared to how things go nationally. So, they had already planned to meet.
And it was such a gentlemanly debate. I mean, they really, you had two good candidates.
Well, they each could have been each other's campaign manager.
Yeah.
They spent more time talking about how good the other guy was. So I'm sure they already did meet and discuss. It's just I'm over here, and I know we will be. I know we'll wrap this up soon.
We are going to wrap this up. I know you have to get out of here too. Go ahead.
The gentlemanly campaign, Lyndon Johnson, he was famous for saying, not only come let us reason together, but we can disagree without being disagreeable. And that is, I think, what North Haveners expect. And it's why people are so upset with Congress, because I was listening today, they said Obama's got very low ratings, but not as low as Congress.
Not as low as theirs.
As Congress has. And it's fine to disagree, but you've got to get the people's business done.
Well, I do think that, and I was involved in a thing between West Haven and North Haven, and the respective heads of government, friends, and from different parties, and one of the things we kept saying was, why can't the people on a national level do this? There's just so much animosity towards one another.
Well, I think with mayors and first selectmen, they are doing the job that has the most impact on a daily basis in people's lives. Congressmen and senators get to give nice big long speeches and policy positions and take long recesses between votes. Decisions that, like Ed O'Brien, the mayor of West Haven, he's doing a great job in West Haven, and Mike here in North Haven. There's a lot of things that they're dealing with on a daily basis to serve their constituencies, that they can be helpful to each other. So the party affiliation of the leader of a municipality, there's a lot more in common between the first selectman in Hamden and North Haven than there is between a representative in Congress in the 3rd and the 1st district. The duties they're doing day by day in their jobs, and the services they have to provide to their constituents.
Maybe they are too much a part of the Beltway, and they're not really, they don't really know their constituency as well as they should.
Well, Walter may have a better idea of this than I do, but the way that I always hear it is that somebody from, let's just say, Arizona has a constituency there, and they have a safe seat. And those people don't want that person to vote the same way as some person from Buffalo, New York, and that person has a safe seat too. So they don't, to keep their seat safe, they keep voting the way and never getting, never seeing the point of compromising to get something accomplished.
When did it become just a job? Has it become a job on a national level rather than a service?
Well, certainly. I mean, the amount of services that Rosa, for example, has to provide to the constituents throughout our entire district, the needs in North Haven are very different from the needs in New Haven. And again, they're very different from the needs in Shelton or in Brantford. So, I mean, the amount of services that her office has to provide is very taxing, on each of these members of Congress. And it is an art to have the right staff to be responsive to needs of constituents, but it is a job because every day there is new issues that have to be dealt with in their home district, let alone.
But I mean, it
for
shouldn't
national
just
politics.
be a job. It has to be.
And I would say, despite the fact that Rosa DeLauro and I may not agree on lots of things and vote the same way if we were sitting in, if I were sitting in Congress, I don't think I've ever, for one moment, thought that she thinks of it as a job. I think she views it as a calling. And
But you were talking about people who were just worried about not disturbing the status quo so that they get reelected. I mean, in that sense, those people are protecting their turf rather than working for their constituents.
I guess I admire most the person who's willing to lose their job over voting how they think is the correct way to vote.
And there are those who do that.
Because
though.
the spot they have in Congress doesn't belong to them.
Exactly.
So, but please don't ask me to try to figure out what's wrong with
I'm just
House of Representatives.
I'm just wondering if that's one of the reasons why. Okay, we are. I just heard we are going to be getting Ridge Road's numbers. Is it funny that it's coming in so late?
It might just be the time delay in getting over. I got some Ridge Road numbers too while we spoke. I don't have them aggregated, but in the other half of Ridge Road, it was 663 for Malloy and 488 for Foley, which actually brings Foley only winning North Haven by somewhere between 400 to 500 votes.
What was that last time?
1,200.
1198.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 1198.
Absentees, yeah. So
Wow.
that makes me very happy because he needs for Foley to win statewide. He needed places like North Haven to build on its core Republican constituency and increase his numbers from 1198 instead of decreasing his numbers to about 400.
Okay.
So that's very from my perspective as Democratic town chair. That's
You're happy with that?
I'm not happy with
The day.
with the day in
Yeah.
general. But that is a positive thing for me to take back. I don't have Dave's numbers yet in Ridge Road.
think we're getting I think we have the new numbers coming in right now. Thank you so much.
I think Dave will end up winning by about 3,000
Okay,
votes.
we do
though.
have Ridge Road.
Yeah, it's
This
still-
is a partial result
Yeah,
once
so
again. And again, these are unofficial. Ridge Road, 726 to 547.
311, 324.
It's pretty close, but that's only a partial result. And we'll be awaiting more numbers coming in eventually. That's okay. You have all of those. So it looks like Dave is going to be here for another couple of years. And so just tell me generally what you feel about what you've seen so far. You're happy because even though it looks like Dave, won again, the numbers, Malloy did better.
From what I've seen so far, it appears that Malloy did better than 4 years ago here in North Haven. And again, he has been here on the ground for the people of North Haven. He has been trying to help with our economic development programs. He has made a priority with the Department of Transportation to try and bring a train station to North Haven near the medical epicenter that Mike has been building. He, he's not forgotten the people of North Haven. He's here for us. He's been showing up at events and trying to work on economic development here in town with First Selectman Frieda. So. It's encouraging to see that his numbers improved, if these numbers we have are correct, from 4 years ago.
Are you surprised that Foley didn't do better?
A little, although once again I've said that I thought that he seemed to have a better campaign the first time, which is surprising to me. I would think that anyone would learn from not to make the same mistakes. But if we have Daniel Malloy for 4 more years, I think, the great thing about elections is that it should be a time of closure. And then you've spoken, and then you get behind and work. And there's no point in starting the criticism. That can happen 3.5 years from now, and the Republicans just need to get a better candidate if that trend goes out. But we're probably not going to know till midnight. If Foley is lost, perhaps we know by midnight.
Well, I'm just
if it's one, we probably
surprised.
don't know till tomorrow morning.
I said this to somebody not too long ago. I had seen one of the debates, and I was not impressed with Mr. Foley, and I said, it seems to me the GOP could have put up a better candidate.
Well, and I think that was one of the smart things for the Republicans of North Haven, that they didn't support Foley early. They were behind McKinney. I mean, I'm surprised the race was and the polls were close as is with Foley as the candidate versus Malloy, but his campaign was centered around attacks on Malloy and bringing Malloy down rather than bringing himself up.
Yeah. Now, do you have any more numbers for us? We, as I said, we have partial result from Ridge Road, and we're still waiting for Bill. Bill is at GOP headquarters, and he has interviews and speeches with Dave Lenfasano and Michael Frieda. We already heard this evening from Michael Frieda.
I do, but they're all kind of scribbles, and I can't really read them all. But I think the end result is Dave won by approximately 3,000 votes.
Okay.
Which, I mean, is 6,000 less than his uncontested 9,000 vote win last year. So, there is that. But he did have the advantage of incumbency, and he's provided services to his constituencies. And I don't think that the gun vote was held against him in a town like North Haven. And I didn't campaign on the difference of that vote.
Mm-hmm. We're still waiting for some Ridge Road numbers. We have partial result from Ridge Road, but we don't have all of the numbers.
But I think it's safe to call it.
Oh, no, I know that. I would say so. But Dave ran a good campaign, and so did Alden Mead. Maybe this is a new face that we're going to see in North Haven politics now, because he is a good candidate.
I certainly hope so. As I said earlier, he did what you want a candidate to do. Mm-hmm. He didn't tear the other candidate down, just brought up positive ideas, and provided a contrast, provided the accountability that we look for in a candidate.
Where are you going to be going as soon as we release you from here?
Well, I think I'll probably be released right before you start rolling a bunch of interviews. I'm probably heading up to the Malloy headquarters up in Hartford.
Oh, all right.
He hasn't eaten yet.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I just made that up.
Oh. And where will you be going?
Home.
Oh.
The numbers I have for the total of Ridge Road are 2,027 for Dave to 1,078 for Alden, but I don't know. Yeah, so I don't know if that is
I think
the
your
final.
numbers are going to be more accurate than ours right now, because we don't have any more coming in. So let's go with yours. What do you have again, please?
For Ridge Road total, I have 2,027 for Dave and 1,078 for Alden, which makes the final numbers 6,112 for Dave and 2,817 for Alden. Which I don't have what that percentage is off the.
Okay,
but
that's.
It looks to be consistent with about a 3,000, a little over 3,000 vote victory.
And I promise we are going to be getting some speeches. I'm just not exactly sure when, but okay, I've been told the speeches are on the way.
All right.
So until then, you can pontificate, either one of you. Is this a fun time of year for you guys, because this is in your blood?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been, working on Election Day for a campaign since I was about 5 or 6 years old with my grandfather. So it's, it's a holiday to me, Election Day.
Mm-hmm.
It's, being out there at the polls, meeting your neighbors. It is something I look forward to every year. And it's one of the most enjoyable things for someone like me to do. That make me a little crazy, but at least there are a few people that also feel that way and join us out at the polls and work for candidates.
I'm not sure I share quite the same enthusiasm. I told you I started when I was 8 years old, which is a lot longer ago than when he was 5, I assure you. But I would say that it's always been in my family's blood to be involved, and service to your town is important, and elections are key to that service. There's many other ways to serve the town, but standing there for election and making your positions clear is important. You know, we talked a while ago about, I was talking about how grateful people should be for politicians. I always tried to point out when I was on the Board of Education that a lot of people like to say, you know, this shouldn't be political. And there are certain things I could agree with that on, but the fact of the matter is, the choice whether to build, for example, a new high school is just plainly a political choice. And if you're going to, you need to persuade people that they should spend the money to do that, to invest in that. But that's what politics is. It's choices as to how you run your town, what you spend your money on, and so elections are an exciting part of how that happens. I don't get as wound up on national elections as I did as a youngster and as a youth. But local stuff, I'm dedicated to this town, and I know Walt's dedicated to this town, and there are plenty of other people. The people that are at each of those headquarters is dedicated to serving this town and making it the best they can.
Well, it's true. Even when I voted this afternoon, and you see everybody working together. I know some are they're getting minimal pay, but they're mostly doing it because they want to contribute.
I'll say this, for the people who are working in both the Republican headquarters, say, and the Democratic headquarters, say, in North Haven, they were all volunteers. They were all your neighbors. They were all the fellow citizens and fellow voters. And, you know, we discussed earlier different boards, you know, ZBA, Board of Ed. You know, how do people end up on those boards? Well, it's because they work together on those campaigns throughout the years, and you get to know each other, you know each other's strengths. I mean, one of the things I always try to do when I learned something about one of my volunteers today that gave me a good idea of when an opening's on a different board, what he would be perfect to serve in that role. And you learn that when you're in the trenches working on a campaign together with people. And then when you are in a situation where there's openings and there's appointments available, well, you know, I'm thinking at all times, you know, where can I best use this individual to serve the town? Because these people want to serve the town. And, you know, you look for someone with strengths, like, oh, this would be a good Board of Ed member. You know, this would be a good member of the library board. You know, and how do you find those people for those positions? Well, a lot of times it's when you work side by side in a campaign. So there were not paid employees on either side, Dave's side or Alden's side, here in North Haven. It was all volunteers who were making the phone calls over the past couple weeks and putting time aside for themselves to help someone else.
But tell us again how people could contact you, may contact you.
Well, for me, the best is the email, waltspader@aol.com, through Facebook, or 203-234-1080. And, you know, if you're interested, if you're a Republican interested in serving on the Republican side, you know, I don't have the Republican town chair's information off the top of my head. But, you know, we do talk all the time between the two of us, and we talk with Mike and Sally on the Democratic side, and Tim. You know, we're all kind of working together to find the right people to serve this town on different boards and commissions, people who want to serve. So we're always looking for good people.
I wish we had some numbers on whether or not the ballot question, what the results on that are, but that, I haven't seen anything.
Well, I'm not sure that North Haven would be a bellwether town on that. I'm just not sure. I mean, it's going to be a statewide.
Well, statewide even. I'm just curious as to what's going to happen with that. Basically, it's enacting legislation that would allow the change and allow, as you said, you feel it's too open-ended, but it would allow early voting. Now, there are, what, 35 states that already do that?
I think 29.
It's in that range, yeah.
And I believe we're getting ready to show you the interviews, but we're having a little bit of a delay with the tapes. But And we're waiting for Dave Yaccarino's acceptance speech. And we still haven't heard about the concession speech, but as you said, they were going to be at the same place.
Yeah, they were talking with each other throughout
Which,
the day.
once again, they're ending the campaign the way they began it, because they were very amicable towards one another. Statewide, this was a pretty negative campaign. Has it been, well, I think the Linda McMahon campaign was pretty bad too. So,
Well, once you get a lot of money in, a lot of it's going to get spent negatively, I think. I think when you don't have a lot of money, you probably tend to husband your resources and spend them as positively as you can.
if Foley doesn't win, do you see a future for him in politics? Or do you think that this would be his last gasp?
I don't think I'm qualified to.
Well, you could think about it.
Well, I can certainly express an opinion.
Of course.
My own is if you don't know how to run a successful campaign a couple of times, it's probably best to hand the ball to somebody else to carry it down the field.
Well, the Republicans will be looking for someone to run against Senator Blumenthal in 2 years.
And we're not going back to the Linda McMahons again?
Well, that's up to the Republicans. I'm fine if they do. But they're going to need someone, they'll probably go to someone again like a Foley who has a lot of money on their own that can just run a race. But again, we don't know what the results are in any other place but
North
1/169th of the state.
Yeah.
I'm just, from what we have here so far, Malloy did better here than he did 4 years ago, and that's all we can say at this moment.
Okay. We are still waiting for some of those interviews to be coming in. And what did we say the difference was between the two? Like a $3,000 vote plurality? 6,112. No, that's like 4,000. So it's a pretty big.
2,800 though. So
2,800 now.
2,800.
Okay.
So 3,300.
So Dave did really well.
We don't have the absentee ballots yet.
No, we don't.
We will have the upcoming report from Bill and the interviews in just a minute. Gentlemen, is there anything you want to say before we leave? Because we're not going to be here too much longer.
Well, the tortoise will be here soon with the tape strapped to its back.
Thanks for watching.
We're waiting for the tape to come up. It will be up shortly.
Do you have an idea how many absentee people voted absentee here this time?
I myself did not run an absentee campaign, so I know that the Republicans had a lead in the absentee ballot. So it's not going to make up a 3,000 vote. It's not going to be significant to change the percentages.
Right.
North Haven did put up the good candidates, as we said, but on a statewide level, it just seems like we've lost some contact with the constituents. I believe we're showing our numbers again, so you can get a good look at these while we're talking. There are some towns, like you said that you felt SD was winning, and that SD was losing, I'm sorry.
No, that was just early results. So what I'm seeing on Twitter.
Do we know anything? Because I'm wondering what's going on statewide, too.
Yeah, just from what I'm looking at online with precincts that are in, Malloy's up 59 to 41% right now, but I don't know what precincts those are. We're kind of in a bubble where I don't...
No, that's very true.
Yeah. The texts I'm getting from my friends in the big cities are saying that the votes are coming in, very good, in Bridgeport and New Haven.
Because the urban areas voted quite heavily.
Right, and it takes a lot long. There's so many precincts there. It's hard. It takes a long time to get those numbers in.
So what's going to happen 4 years from now if Malloy is still in? Are we going to be as unhappy with some of the things, or are we just going to? I don't know if he would run again after that. Anyway, he sounded a little iffy. Even when they were talking to him, he wasn't really positive about winning. So.
Because he had to focus on the race that's in front of him. You can't start running yesterday.
No, I
a
know, but
campaign
he
for 4
seemed a
years from
little,
now.
after Visconti pulled out, do you think that gave him a moment to ponder what was going on, because he was started coming up?
No, because the moment he had right after Visconti pulled out was a rally with 2,000 people in Bridgeport with the
Yeah.
President of the United States coming just for him.
Yeah.
Because Malloy has been one of the leading governors
Mm-hmm.
in the country to back, the president's policies,
Mm-hmm.
which again doesn't make him popular with a large portion of the electorate in Connecticut, but that's leadership, believing what he believes in and still going forward with
Mm-hmm.
it, and risking it all in an election to forward with policies that he believes in.
Now, Chris Christie came for Foley. Do you think that bumped up his numbers at all?
I'm sure that made Malloy happy as well.
I would agree with that. I'm not sure Chris Christie plays in Connecticut.
And he came here a couple of times, too.
5.
5 times.
Yes, just to
Wow.
remind the voters 5 times that we have a
Wow.
better governor than New Jersey.
Oh, my goodness. Well, nationally, I don't know what's happening. I really wish we had some numbers nationally. But locally, we can say one thing. We can say Dave Yaccarino will be going to Hartford again. And Alden Mead looks like he can do something in the future, because it was a really well-run campaign on both sides. And we still don't have all the numbers from Ridge Road and may not get them. But the ones that we do have do show, once again, that Dave Yaccarino won that area, won that district.
And I'm guessing they're already calling Attorney General for Jepson over Key Westby, which is not terribly surprised. I mean, Jepson's done a great job as Attorney General, following the lead of Dick Blumenthal, as far as making the office be responsive to the citizens of Connecticut and their concerns, and consumer protection-wise, and adequately representing the state of Connecticut in all court, state, and federal. So I don't think it's a surprise that Jepson, given his record of success over the past 4 years, has already been named a victory. And I'm guessing that Ted Kennedy also won, is what I'm hearing, in Branford. So that's one of the votes that the Senate Republicans were desperately looking to add to try and take a majority in Connecticut. So I'm hearing that in Branford, Ted Kennedy has been declared the winner.
And so is this another dynasty now? The Kennedy dynasty continues? Because he's been a Connecticut resident for a very long time.
Well, right now he's got 2 years to learn the state Senate. And he'll at least be with a what appears to be probably a Democratic majority. But he says that's the job he was running for, not another job. So we'll see how he does in the Senate.
Thank you. And I just found out that we have a very short video clip, Dave Yaccarino, and I'm assuming he's talking about his re-election.
Well, folks, you're here in the background. We have Dave Yaccarino, who overwhelmingly won. Dave, what have you got to say to all your people out there?
Well, I'm very fortunate, and I'd like to thank the North Haven citizens and voters for voting for me and believing in me. My job always is to do the best I could for all people, and I've strived to do that for the last 4 years. And we'll do the same thing for the next 2 years. I'm very thankful, and I'd like to thank you all. And thank you, Joe, for having me on tonight. It's always a team effort, but I really appreciate everything.
Hi, I just wanted to, number one, congratulate Dave on a great race that I think we both put forth a great effort. And then also, I've got a lot of nicknames since I've been doing this, and anyway, so I did want to congratulate Dave. I think it was a great race, and as I've said before, especially during the debate, that everybody's vote is really a treasure. That's the most important thing. And I think that this race proved that we can have a race where that treasure can be treated with dignity, where we ran a super campaign on both sides. So I'm very happy about that. And that was really the point. And I also wanted to thank everybody who's in the room who helped me with mailing and phone calls and knocking on doors and just helping to shore me up all the time to continue the effort. And signs, and fabulous signs. And so really, you know, we didn't get the most votes, but I'm so lucky to be surrounded by a room full of winners. And so what could be better than that? So this is a really happy day for me. And I, of course, hope it's a very happy day for Dave and the opponents, but especially for me because we did something we wanted to do, and we did it well. And I made a lot of friends on really both sides, but the people who helped me as well as the people who were opponents. And I think it says a lot about North Haven and what North Haven is and what it can be. And so I just want to thank everybody completely. Thank you very much.
We want to thank everybody who came here tonight. We want to thank you for your support that you have given us throughout the years. We really appreciate it. Dave is one of the hardest working guys I know at the Capitol, one of the most nervous guys when it comes to elections that I know of ever. He's a great guy, well deserving of winning another term up at the Capitol. I want to introduce my wife, Jill, who's without support. You can't do this because it takes a lot of time. Honey, thank you so much. You know, this year is an important year at the Capitol. A few things, one of which is I hope that Tom Foley is able to pull this out. You know, it's going to be tough. It's a tough night. What they did in this election, to me, goes beyond the pale. You know, we took contractors' money out of elections, and they put it back into elections by using the federal funds. That, to me, is morally wrong. I think it's legally wrong. And I hope at the end of the day, they're held accountable for their actions. That bothers me one of the most. We are working hard in the state Senate. I will tell you some of the numbers. I have some of my guys in the other room on the numbers because we need 6 to tie the Senate race. Right now, we're getting some pretty good returns back. So I think we're going to pick up 2 seats, is my best guess at this moment. But I still believe we can pick up more than that, maybe 4 or 5. And I hope we can do that because we need to change the direction of this state. We have to stop taxing. We have to stop borrowing. We have to stop putting the burdens on taxpayers. This governor, Malloy, 3 days last week gave out $121 million on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. $121 borrowed million. That's just ridiculous. It's shameful. But only voters can make the change, and I hope they do it tonight. So with that, I want to thank you all so much for your support. It is very much appreciated. And I'll turn it back over to the chief.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before I call David up to the mic, I also want to congratulate Judge Brandt, Judge of Probate. Come on up. Say at least 2 words.
I also want to express my appreciation for all the support. It's been 12 years. In the last 4 years, I've been at combined court with East Haven and North Haven, and it's been a great experience. And I'm still thanking everyone every day when I go to work, so I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, and without further ado, State Representative Dave Yaccarino. Great job, Dave.
Thank you so much. It's just such an honor tonight to represent North Haven, to win tonight, and have the trust of the voters of North Haven. It's a great town. I work with a great senator. The next Senate minority leader, hopefully majority leader of Connecticut, Len Fasano. does a great, great job. But candidates can't do it without the help of really all you out there. And I'd like my campaign committee to come up here because I couldn't do it without them. My friend Frank Tropiano, my campaign manager, please. Mike Nappi, Mike Matero and Susan Matero, please come up. Is Jimmy Grillo here?
Yeah, he's here.
John Bamonte. Melissa, you helped so much. You did all our mailers. We have a great town committee. And Carolyn Wright, I always seem to forget Carolyn, and I'm so sorry for that, but she's such a wonderful person, such a wonderful woman. And the whole town committee, we can't do this without so many volunteers. The town committee, and then your election committee. And the help of Senator Fasano, and we have our very good first selectman, Mike Frieda. I'm just so honored. I'm very proud that we ran a very clean campaign. I've run 3 campaigns now, and every one been very clean, and I'm really proud of that. So just the trust of the North Haven voters. I'd like to thank my family. My mom's here, my 3 children, Dave, Joe, and Carolyn. I love you very much. Just an honor. And Tina. You can't do this without support, and it's very important. As far as the state, we need to be honest with our residents and our voters and the citizens of Connecticut. We have taxed too much. We've had $3 billion of new taxes in 4 years. Very dishonest budget. But we have to be honest, Democrats and Republicans, and we must work together for the betterment of Connecticut. We need jobs, but we need to get out of the way of so many burdensome regulations. But I'm striving to work as best as possible and do the best job for North Haven, the state of Connecticut, and working for the betterment of all. But I'd like to thank you all. It's an honor, it's a pleasure, and it's very humbled to be the representative of North Haven, the town I grew up in. That's really about it. I'd like to thank you all. Thank you. I don't think I forgot anybody.
I am so proud of North Haven. I am so proud of State Senator Len Fasano, and I am so proud of State Representative Dave Yaccarino. Some of you have heard me say this before, but these 2 wonderful individuals who so faithfully served North Haven, Connecticut, have been friends of mine for almost 30 years. In Len's case, 32 years. In Dave's case, 25 years. And back then, we never dreamed that we would be doing what we're doing today. But to have the opportunity to work with State Senator Len Fasano, to work with State Representative Dave Yaccarino, I'd like to think that the 3 of us make a pretty good team on behalf of all of North Haven. And it's my delight, honor, and privilege to work with both Len and work with Dave. And I'm so proud of their efforts, Len running unopposed, and the campaign that Dave ran, the hard work, over 4,000 homes that gentleman walked. They both deserve a round of great applause, and please give it to them. And Len and Dave, I truly value and appreciate your personal friendship, and I look forward to working with both of you for the future. Thank you very much for your efforts on behalf of our great town.
And thank you once again for joining us this evening. It's been a very long evening, gentlemen, and I'd like to thank both of you for staying with us this long. And we are going to be, concluding our evening. And once again, Dave Yaccarino, as you just saw, has won re-election. Thank you very much.